So last week we talked about God's promise. What's God's promise that we talked about last week? I will give you what?
Rest.
Huh? Rest. That promises rest. Okay? But we talked about three things. You know, how do I get that rest? We talked about three main points last week. Let's see who remembers any of it.
Sincere. Sincere.
Sincere. Okay? What else? Serious. Okay? What else? Trusting. Trusting in God. And we ended last week with a verse. Okay? In 2 Chronicles 16. I want to kind of go back to it and have you keep reminding yourself with it. 2 Chronicles 16 verse 9. What is God looking for? What is the eyes of the Lord looking for?
A sincere person.
Mm-hmm. Someone who follows him full-heartedly. Someone who is sincere. He is looking to show himself strong to someone who is completely loyal, has a whole heart in following him. That's all the same words. Okay? Now we're studying Daniel in the days we started a few weeks before Christmas. Now Daniel has this seriousness, sincere, trusting. You know, we saw this as we looked at Daniel 1 and how he refused the wine, he refused whatever compromises his relationship with God. Okay, we saw that. And then we started looking at Daniel 2. So go with me to Daniel 2. And we're going to spend most of our time today. Daniel 2. So let me give you a little bit of a background of Daniel 2, because we kind of covered the first part of it. So Daniel was a captive. So Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, comes over to Jerusalem, takes the best that they have so far as young men, takes them over to Babylon. Babylon was an empire, not a country. It was an empire, several countries. Okay? And then he starts training them to become part of his leadership in that kingdom. So Nebuchadnezzar, we saw in the beginning of that chapter, he had a dream. And then we were like, how is God connecting with someone like Nebuchadnezzar? Because if you read on Nebuchadnezzar, he was probably one of the worst kings ever in the history of the world. You know, like we saw in the wise men here, they couldn't give him what the dream is, and he goes, I'm going to cut them all in pieces. He didn't care the number, he cuts in pieces. That's what kind of a person Nebuchadnezzar was. And we saw how the Bible over and over and over in Jeremiah goes, Nebuchadnezzar, my servant. In Jeremiah. 3 times he says, Nebuchadnezzar, my servant. And you're thinking, this evil person, God's servant? You realize that God oversees kings and kingdoms. He raises ones and he puts down ones. He controls. Because the ultimate goal of God in putting leaders is his kingdom, not our comfort. He is always looking at what his kingdom is, regardless of what we see. Because right now you're looking at the world from a lens of this moment you're in, right? You don't know what's going to happen in a year. God doesn't have a timeline. Doesn't say, I'm in this moment, but I'm not sure what's going to happen in a year. God says, I see from beginning to end. And that's why I put who I put for my purpose, for my kingdom. Because I see how it ends. I see the end result. So that's kind of how it starts, is this Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And when you look toward the end of that chapter, his dream was related to, how's the future going to be? What's going to happen after this big kingdom? Am I going to just die and that kingdom disintegrates? And then God reveals to him in that dream what's going to happen. And it troubled him. And then he brought over all of his magicians and whatever he has, and he goes, I want someone to tell me the dream and tell me the interpretation. Why is he doing this? Well, some people say because he forgot parts of the dream. Could be. I believe that because the dream was so troubling, he wants to make sure if someone is going to tell him what the dream was, that guess what the interpretation is going to be? Probably going to be actually right. Because if I dream and then I say, I want you to tell me the dream and then tell me how you interpret it, if you can tell me what I dreamt last night, I guarantee you what you're going to tell me is going to be right. That's kind of what you see here in the story in Daniel 2. Okay. Someone's hungry. So basically in the story in the beginning of Daniel, they try to go back and forth with him. Saying, hey, okay, give us time. Maybe he's going to forget his request. And he goes, no, you need to tell me now. Or else I'm going to cut you all in pieces. So Daniel was one of those wise men. So we pick it up here, verse 14. In Daniel 2. So if someone can read 14 to 16.
When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke with him with wisdom and tact.
2:16. Go ahead.
He asked the king's officer, "Why did the king issue such a harsh decree?" Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, Daniel went into the king and asked for time, so that he might interpret the dream for him.
What is this Arioch coming to do? Look at verse 14. What is he coming to do?
Kill the wise men.
Kill who?
The wise men.
Yeah, and who's one of them?
Daniel.
Daniel. How troubled was Daniel? Do you see any trouble in Daniel?
No.
He was very calm. Okay, that doesn't sound like someone's going to get killed, right? He's like, okay, well, that's okay. God got it. We're going to figure it out. Calm. Ask yourself, okay, when situations are not going your way, maybe it doesn't get to the point that someone's going to kill you physically. Okay, how troubled do you get? Okay, and how calm are you? How trusting in God are you when it comes to issues that you're going through? You don't see any here trouble with Daniel. You don't see any anxiety with Daniel. You see someone who is so trusting in God that even though this guy is coming to take his life, he goes, take me to the king. I know the God that I'm speaking on. Okay.
Can you say that one more time? Things don't go your way.
Okay. When things don't go your way, how calm are you? Okay. Daniel was calm. It's as if nothing is happening. Nothing is disturbing him. Okay. He was so trusting in God. Now, he went to the king. I want to show you a verse in Daniel 1 that kind of explains a little bit. If you look in Daniel 1:17, kind of explains why Daniel is so calm. God gave him a gift. He was trusting in what God has given him. Look at what it says in Daniel 1:17.
As for these four young men, God gave them the knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams.
So his friends has a lot of understanding, but Daniel specifically, God gave him interpretation of visions and dreams, and he was so trusting that God will take him through this. That when this officer came to say, hey, there is an order from the king, he goes, take me to the king. And he goes, give me time and I will give you the dream and the interpretation of it. We covered this before, this part, as you see Daniel's steps. So the next steps he took, okay, he went to his friends and he goes, I need prayer. And you know what? Some of us live their life alone. We fall alone, we get up alone. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's why God gave us a community of people around us. Okay? So when I need prayer, I can say, hey, I need help. Okay? Daniel needed prayer. The first thing he went to is his 3 friends. And he goes, oh, we need to go to God. We need to pray. We need to fast. We have an issue and only God can help us through that. And you see that one of the first things that Daniel did. Another thing that Daniel did here is he was living expectantly. And this is important, by the way. Because if you don't expect in faith God's going to do anything, is he going to do anything? He's not. Because you don't even expect him to do it. If you don't expect God is going to do something new in my life, if I don't expect God's going to do something different in my life, is he going to do anything? No, he's not. Because I am not expecting it. I am not coming to him based on promises he said. Daniel was coming to him based on how he lived his life and what God did in his life. And he goes, God, you're going to honor me in front of them. He put that issue at his feet. He was expecting God to do something. Interesting, as you go into the story, God reveals to him the vision and the interpretation, as we're going to look at. You know, if this happens to you and I, think about it. Can you imagine if someone like higher up comes and asks you this crazy thing, and then God gives you, let's not say a vision. You know, maybe you're praying for someone and God gives you a prophecy of something that happened exactly for them. How excited do you get with yourself? And how excited do you get with God? You know, a lot of times we get so excited with ourselves as if this is something we did. We didn't do anything. All I did was an open vessel that God used. That's about as simple as I can put it. Okay? I didn't do anything. If God gives me a gift of teaching, did I do anything to earn a gift? No. It's a gift. So who gets the glory? And watch out if you get the glory. Because that's going to fade away quite quickly if I decide, oh, I am the one who's doing anything. So Daniel, as you look at that prayer, he gives all the glory to him. We want to pick it up now as he gets into the dream and the interpretation of it. And you're going to have to be awake with me because we're going to get into a lot of those kingdoms, okay, in that dream. With me so far? Yes. Any questions?
No.
Okay. So let's jump into verse 24. So if someone can read verse 24 to 26.
Then Daniel went in to see Arioch, whom the king had ordered to execute the wise men of Babylon. Daniel said to him, "Don't kill the wise men. Take me to the king, and I will tell him the meaning of his dream." Arioch quickly took Daniel to the king and said, "I have found one of the captives from Judah who will tell the king the meaning of his dream." The king said to Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, "Is this true? Can you tell me what my dream was and what it means?"
Isn't it interesting, one of the first things Daniel did? What is one of the first things Daniel did in verse 24? What is the order of the king? To kill all the wise men, right? What is Daniel saying to the officer?
Don't destroy them.
Don't kill them. Save them. Now, let me tell you, are these magicians and sorcerers and all of these, do they worship God?
No.
But did Daniel have compassion on them? He had a heart for them? He had a heart for them. He goes, don't destroy them. And many times, we saw this in Acts, I'll leave it to you, Acts 27. Paul was in a boat, was traveling to Rome. Boat gets into a lot of trouble. Okay? And then Paul started praying. And God is saying, I'm going to save you, but I'm not only going to save you. I'm going to save the 267 that are in the boat. and takes them to where you're at. So for your sake, I'm going to save everyone in that boat. And you know, sometimes when you are in the world, God not only wants to bless you, but He wants through you to show favor to others. Through you, He wants to show who He is. He is a compassionate, He is loving, He is gracious. So even though, Daniel, you're going through all this trouble, yeah, but it's not only for you, Daniel. I want to show favor. I want to show grace to even Babylon. Okay? A lot of times God uses us for others. And then we see here, the king is saying, I just thought it was interesting, this Arya guy. Did he really find Daniel and ask him to do something? He was going to kill Daniel, right? And Daniel is all like, give me time, you know? And then Arya is going to the king saying, hey, I found you someone that's going to, you know, that's going to interpret the dream and help you out here, king. He didn't do anything, you know? But he's trying to take the credit for it. I want you to notice what Daniel says in front of the king. So look at verse 27 and 28.
Daniel answered the king and said, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers. He showed to the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has made known to King Neb what will be in the latter days.
So he's kind of telling him, hey, all of your wise men and magicians and astrologers and Chaldeans couldn't figure it out for you. But I know a God that can do that can do the impossible. And you know what? Maybe you are in a situation that it went through a lot of people and nothing happened. There is one that can. Take heart. There is one that can change anything, that can open any door. So he's saying, you know what, king, you depended on the wrong person. You depended on the wrong people. Let me show you what my God does. Let me show you who the true God is. And when you read the end of the story, if we get today to the end of the story, he actually shows him how God is way above whatever pagan gods Nebuchadnezzar had. He shows him that plainly. So he starts getting into what the dream is. So let's start jumping from verse 30. And I want someone to read the whole dream together. So verse 30 to 35.
But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me for any wisdom residing in me more than in any other living man, but for the purpose of making an interpretation known to the king, and that you may understand the thoughts of your mind. You, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue. That statue, which was large and extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that statue was made of fine gold, its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and its thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You continued looking until a stone was cut off without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone was struck, the statue became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. The interpretation of Babylon, the first kingdom.
Okay. Now let's kind of break it down here. So he saw a big statue. Okay? Great image. The head of made of what? Gold. Okay? And then you have the arms and the chest made of what? Silver. And then you have the belly and the side made of what? Bronze. Then you have this part, the legs made of? And then the toes?
Iron and clay.
Partly iron, 10 toes, partly iron, partly clay. Sounds like, what the heck is that? Who cares? No, but I want you to notice certain things. Does the preciousness of the metal decrease or increase?
Decrease.
Right? It goes gold, silver, bronze, iron, clay. Right? Now, does the strength increase or decrease?
Decrease.
Decrease. Decrease? Strength? Is gold stronger than iron?
Yes.
Do they build buildings with gold or iron? I mean, some people build with gold, but we have a lot of money, but that's a different story. But, you build buildings with iron, okay? So, silver is stronger than gold, and so on. So, strength increases, preciousness decreases, okay? So, think of all of this. Now, not only this, you have to start with the head, right? There is unity, one head. Then he goes 2 arms and now there is more. There is division, right? And it goes to 10 toes. There is more division, okay? So it goes from unity to division as you go down. All of these are important, okay? So I don't want to lose you. So if you're confused, raise your hand. Say, I'm lost, okay? So we have the unity, okay? We have position. So it goes from head to toes, okay? And then you ask yourself, what is he saying? Remember, what was he asking in the beginning? He was saying how the future is. How is my kingdom going to be, Nebuchadnezzar? So God is showing him, Daniel was written 600 years before Christ. God was showing him what's going to happen until the year 14 something after Christ, when the Roman Empire technically disintegrated. That's what the statue is. Okay? Now it's interesting, he goes, and I want you to notice certain things. Look at verse 34. He goes, you watch while a stone was cut out without hands. We're going to get to that phrase. Which struck the image where?
On his feet.
On the feet, on those 10 toes down there. They are mixed clay and iron. Okay? That's important. Okay? And then it all came crashing down. And then this stone became what? A great mountain and filled the whole earth. So what is he showing him? He's showing him the world kingdoms. That's what he's showing him. Okay? So you start here, and we can take it verse by verse, and we'll explain more to what is being said. So someone can read for us verse 37 and 38.
Your Majesty, you are the King of kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed all mankind, and the beasts of the field and the birds in the sky. Wherever they live, he has made you ruler over them all. You are the head of gold.
You have to understand something about Babylon. Babylon is a representation of worshipping pagan religions. All pagan religions. That's why Babylon starts in Genesis and ends in Revelation. Babylon is a representation of all pagan religions. Any false religion, Babylon represents that. Okay? Now you say, well, how the heck do you know that? Okay? So we're going to come back to Daniel, so don't lose Daniel. Go to Genesis. I love God's word. Go to Genesis. We're going to look at a guy named Nimrod. Nimrod had some kids. Okay? Genesis 10. Verses 9 and 10.
a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh in Shinar.
In the land of Shinar. Okay? That's Babylon. So Nimrod, okay, was in the land called the land of Shinar. Okay? And one of his sons called Babylon. Now it's interesting. We all know the Tower of Babel, right? They tried to build a tower to get to. Okay? Where do you think they built the tower at? Okay? Look at chapter 11. So go Genesis 11. Verse 2.
As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there.
And then the next verse, they start building the Tower of Babel. So Babylon was the beginning of the fallout for Noah to have the ark, for God to destroy the earth. The beginning of destruction, how God flooded the earth, was Babylon. Was from that point. Now it's interesting, if you go to Revelation 17, he's going to see talking about Babylon too. And there is two different kinds of Babylon. There is the religious Babylon, which is Rome, and there is the political Babylon, which is the Antichrist. So if you go to Revelation 17, you're going to read Babylon, and you're thinking, I thought Babylon was destroyed a long time ago. Yeah, because he's speaking, spiritually speaking, it's a representation of every false religion. Every false religion. That's what Babylon is. So here, going back to Daniel, he goes, you're the head of gold. Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head of gold. Okay? You have to understand, Babylon Empire lasted 80 years. Okay? Now the next one lasted 200, which is the Medes and Persians. Okay? Which is what's going to look next. So the silver is another empire called the Medes and Persians. Two empires that started to combine and defeated Babylon, the Babylonian Empire. Remember the two arms and the chest, Medes, Persians, connecting. That's the next one, the next empire. So for 200 years, the Medes and Persians were controlling most of the world. Then after that came the third one, which is bronze. And we all heard of Alexander the Great, right? Okay? So Alexander the Great conquered the whole world. He was about 30-some years old when he died. And if you read history, he took from the Middle East to all of Europe, all the way to India. Okay? He took every nation known to man. And he died out of drunkenness. He died out of frustration that he can't conquer anything else. Literally. He was frustrated because he can't conquer anything else. So he died out of, many say, out of depression and frustration. You know, because what am I going to do now? That's how great, you know, he built Alexandria, you know, in Egypt. All of this is Alexander the Great. Okay? That is the side and the belly. Okay? The bronze. Then what's the next empire? The Romans. Think about this too. You know, Alexander the Great conquered the whole world, right? What language do you think was spread out through the whole world?
Greek.
Greek. Why do you think the New Testament came in Greek? Because everyone can understand it. So God was looking ahead. Christ is coming. And I want God's word to spread. So yeah, it may seem quite evil. But God's at work because he sees the end. He sees what's going to come next. Okay? Now we're going to come to the next kingdom, which is Rome. Okay? And it's interesting, Rome here, he kind of divides Rome into two pieces. So go to verse 40. So if someone reads 40 and 41. You're with me? Who's lost? Who's completely lost? Are we good? Huh? Okay. So anybody has a question? I know this is not easy here that we're looking at, okay? But I think as we look at the whole thing, it's going to clear. Okay? You're with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at verse 40 and 41.
Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, for iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly iron, so these will be a divided kingdom. Yet you will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as we saw iron mixed with clay.
Okay. So if you study the Roman Empire started very strong. But you know that the Roman Empire was never defeated? Right? The Roman Empire was never defeated. If you study history, who defeated the Roman Empire? It just disintegrated. All of a sudden, it just became multiple countries, and no one defeated the Roman Empire. And when you think about it, you know Napoleon, what he was trying to do? What do you think Napoleon was trying to do? We all know who Napoleon is, right? What he is trying to do in France? He was trying to create another empire. Failed. What do you think Hitler was trying to do? Same thing. He was trying to create an empire. Failed. God knew they're going to fail, by the way. Because the same Roman Empire is going to reappear. Those iron legs are different than the 10 toes. Okay? So, it disintegrated. It was strong. It disintegrated. But then, all of you heard about something called the European Union, right? Okay? It's happening in Europe. And the main chartered, I mean, they go between 12, 11, 10, okay? But I guarantee you, when Christ comes back, they're going to be 10 nations in that European Union. And you have to think, too, he's looking at Europe when? Our Europe here? Or he's looking at Europe back then? You know, if you go home and look at a map of what Europe was 200 years ago, a lot of these countries that I don't even know where they came from, like Montenegro and, you know, some of these countries I can't even pronounce. These are all offshoots of other countries. They weren't there. If you look at the map, you're going to see big countries. You know, England is there, Germany is there. All of those countries that I can't even pronounce are not there. Okay? Why? Because they are part of others. That prophecy is written back then, based on that. Now you say, well, how do you know all this? How do you know these are 10 toes, are 10 kingdoms, and all of this? Right? Okay. So now we're going to kind of make it clear. Go to Daniel 7. So Daniel 7 is exactly like Daniel 2. Exactly like Daniel 2. Daniel 7 is exactly like Daniel 2. However, the vision was given to Daniel instead of the vision given to Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? So if someone can read for me verses 2 to 7. I know it's a long passage.
Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another.
Let's stop there for a second, Jose. Okay? Great sea means the sea of people. A lot of times you say this word, the sea of people. Okay? So four things came out of those sea of people, four beasts. And when he says beasts, he's describing kingdoms right now he's going to be talking about. Okay?
The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. And as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man.
Okay, stop there. If you want to jot down, go home and pull up and say the emblem. You know the emblem, when they have the emblem for a country? Go home and Google the emblem for Babylon. It is a lion with an eagle wings. That's the emblem for Babylon. Okay.
And the mind of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one, like a bear. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And it was told, Arise, devour much flesh.
Okay, it had 3 ribs, right? That's the Medes Persians. You know what these three ribs represent? The Medes and Persians had 3 capitals: Babylon, Susa, and then bless you, Persepolis. They had 3 different capitals, including Babylon. Okay, that's the Medes and Persians empire. Verse 6.
After this I looked, and behold another, like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it.
Wow, this one was the most powerful. That's why many are trying to say Daniel was written way past the Greek Empire, which is not true. Okay, because there is no way. Who is this here? Who's the leopard? We said Medo-Persians, Babylonian, Medo-Persians. What's the next one?
Alexander.
Exactly. Think about it. How fast is a leopard? How fast is a leopard? How fast is a leopard with 4 wings of a bird? How fast did Alexander the Great conquer the world? Think about it. He's not fast. He is exceedingly fast to the point that he conquered the whole world in the shortest time you can imagine, defeating armies of sometimes million in an army. And it's interesting, he was a leopard. The beast also had 4 heads. You know why? Because after Alexander the Great passed away, his kingdom was divided into 4 parts exactly. Okay, that's the next one. Now verse 7.
After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns.
And it had 10 horns, right? Remember the 10 toes, right? Okay. So, same chapter, go to verse 24. Chapter 7, verse 24.
As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings.
So what is those 10 horns?
The 10 nations?
10 nations. Okay? And then out of those 10 horns, there is a small horn. You know who that is? The Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to appear. He's talking about the end times. Okay? Now, you say, how does that all connect? Okay? Go to Revelation. Okay, so far, are you with me?
Yeah.
So far. Okay. Go to Revelation 13. Revelation 13, verses 1 and 2.
And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads.
Listen to what he says here in verse. So he goes, this beast, which he's talking about the Antichrist, okay, who is going to come out, he's having 7 heads. You know what's the most popular name for Rome? The city on 7 hills. Okay, and later on I can show you where that even is clearer. And 10 horns. Okay, listen to verse 2 here.
And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority.
Wow. I want you to recognize what you just read, right? The Antichrist here is going to appear. How is he going to look like? Look at verse 2. A leopard. What kingdom is that? What kingdom is that? The leopard. Greek. Okay, what's the next one? The bear. Which kingdom was that? The Persians. And the lion. Which kingdom was that? And then him, which is the Roman. That's why he didn't mention the last one. Because he goes, he's going to have the power and evilness of all four kingdoms. That's what Daniel was saying. He's going to have the lion, Babylon. He's going to have the Greek. He's going to have the Medo-Persians. And he's going to have the Roman power. That's why he didn't mention Rome here. Because he is going to be the resurrection of that Roman Empire. With me, or I lost someone here?
I'm a little lost.
Hmm?
I'm a little lost. Like, so,
Okay.
so what was the first kingdom?
The Babylonians.
Is that the lion?
Okay.
That's the.
So the lion is the Babylonians. And then the bear. And then the leopard, which is Alexander the Great. And then the Romans, the last one, which is going to be resurrected, the 10 toes. That's the resurrection of the Roman Empire at the end times.
Who's the bear again?
The bear, the Medes and Persians. Remember when I said two empires connecting? Okay? With me so far?
Yes.
Okay, let's go back to Daniel, because I love how, you know, it's kind of, this is the embodiment of what the world is, right? But then, where is God in all of this, right? Where is God in all of this? That's where we want to end. Where is God? Where's God's kingdom? Okay? So if someone can start reading verse 43 and 44. Daniel 2. Sorry.
43 and
Yeah, 44.
as you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever.
So here we're saying, by the way, just a note here. You know, mixing never works. You know, iron and clay never go together. Okay? So if I'm trying to mix things up, if I'm trying to compromise when it comes to God, to my relationship with God, never gonna stand. Never gonna stand. Okay? I have to be on one side or the other. So, just kind of a aside here. Okay? And then he goes, verse 44, and in the days of these kings. Which kings? What is he talking about?
All of them?
Yeah, he's talking about, remember he's talking earlier about what? The toes, the 10 toes, the 10 kings. In the day of these kings, which means at the end times, then God is going to come. Okay? And then he goes, God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Okay? Now you ask yourself, verse 45, inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands. What is he referring to? What is the stone? Who's the stone?
Jesus.
Right? Jesus. Okay? We're not sure, right? We're not sure who's the stone. Who's the stone?
Jesus.
Okay? Okay, go to Matthew 21. Toward the end of the chapter. Matthew 21. Someone can read verse 42 to 44.
Jesus said to them, have you never read in the scriptures? The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I tell you that the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people who will produce its fruit. Anyone who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces. Anyone on whom it falls will be crushed.
So that stone is who? Christ. 1 Corinthians, it says clearly, he is the rock of salvation. And he goes, whoever falls on him will be changed. But whoever he falls on him, he will grind him. You know what he's doing here in Daniel at the end? He's falling on every nation. That's why when you read the Revelation, you see all this destruction. God's judgment being poured. Because there will come a time where God says, I have given you the grace. There is justice. And here you're seeing a stone that's cut without hands. You know what this means? It means he was born without any help. He was born by the Spirit. He died of his own. He didn't die because he sinned. He didn't die because of anything he did. He was resurrected in his own power. It was a stone that's cut without hands. There was no need for any help when he came. And then the destruction started where? It didn't start from Babylon. It started from the bottom, the feet. Because it's going to happen when Christ comes back. Now you ask yourself, well, what is holding Christ from coming back?
People need to be saved.
His grace that's holding. There is nothing biblically that's holding. He can come this second. Because everything is ready. Everything is ready. So here Daniel ends in verse 45. He goes, cut the silver, the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. And he goes, I want to tell you, the dream is certain and its interpretation is sure. It's a guaranteed it's going to happen. And you know what's interesting? I was studying. The kingdom of God became a great mountain, right? Okay, we read this kind of in the beginning. He goes, became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Back in verse 35. You know one of the gods of Nebuchadnezzar? The translation of him is the great mountain. And God was sending Nebuchadnezzar a message saying, you may think you have a God that's a great. But I want to show you who is great. And I want you to leave here understanding that, you know what? God is in control. Even when you feel things are out of control, God is in control. He knows what he's doing. You know what? Daniel became prime minister, if you read the last four verses. He became prime minister, basically, after this. And basically, Nebuchadnezzar bowed down to him and so on. You know, if Daniel started off by saying, hey, I want to be the prime minister of Babylon. What can I study? What can I do? How can I get there? Do you think he would have gotten to where he was? No. He started off by saying, I'm going to obey God in the little things. I'm not going to drink wine. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. God saw his heart, that he was loyal to him. Because guess what? God is looking. His eyes are going back and forth, looking for someone who's loyal. Hey, I want to show strength to someone. I want to show my power to someone, but I can't because I'm looking for someone who's loyal. Daniel became prime minister not because he studied the Babylonian culture, not because he did anything when it comes to being a prime minister. He did one thing. He said, I'm going to be loyal to what God wants me to do no matter the consequences. And God goes, because of that, I will show you what I'm going to do. Daniel became the prime minister at an early age. He was probably 20 years old, 21 years old, of the greatest empire, the head of gold. God honored him to lift him up to be the second in command after Nebuchadnezzar. Now when you think about it, do you want God to do it for you or do you want to do it for God? That's really the difference. The difference of where Daniel is at here is a choice we always make in our life. We either want God to do it for us, and for him to do that, I need to be loyal. I need to be wholehearted. Or I am so used to doing it on my own. And that means I will continue to be in a cycle of trying and failing, trying and failing, trying and failing. That's a choice. Daniel ends the chapter being second in command. Where do you want your life to end and be where? This chapter tells us there is a worldly kingdom. There is a body that he showed you, a statue from head to toe. You know there is another body too. It's called the body of Christ. And in that body of Christ, there is no difference in preciousness. There is no difference in position. It doesn't go from top to bottom and it goes down and the toes are less than the ears and no. Each person in the body is the same as the whole body. It doesn't go as the world does. That's what I want you to leave here. It's thinking, you know what? Maybe my role is small. And in the world's kingdom, they don't care. You're crushed. But in God's kingdom, you're precious. Because you have a head that looks at you and says, you're precious. Would you pray with me?